No person in the United States
shall, on the ground of race,
color, or national origin,
be excluded from participation in,
be denied the benefits of,
or be subjected to discrimination
under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance.
Hello, I'm Jim Vance. Decades have passed since the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his I Have a Dream speech on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial here in Washington, D.C. But discrimination is still a problem in these United States. And discrimination prohibited by Title VI can be among the most difficult, yet important to recognize and understand. It means that all people in this country are entitled to equal treatment by federally funded programs or services, be they police, parks and recreation, education, healthcare, transportation, or anything else. If services like these receive federal financial assistance and the people operating the programs withhold their benefits from people or treat certain people differently because of race, color, or national origin, discrimination prohibited by Title VI may be involved. It was President Lyndon Johnson who signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. At the time, many people called it the most important piece of civil rights legislation since the Emancipation Proclamation outlawed slavery about 100 years earlier. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 aimed to end discrimination based on race, color, or national origin. Title VI of the Civil Rights Act specifically focuses on programs and activities that receive federal financial assistance, often in the form of grants. The money can go from the federal government to state governments or departments to local governments or departments. It can also go from the federal government directly to state governments or departments, or from the federal government directly to local governments. Sometimes federal aid goes to programs that are non-governmental entities, like corporations or nonprofit groups, either directly from the federal government or through state or local governments. These non-governmental entities will then be covered by Title VI, as will the state or local government entities.
The second one would be...
It's not just money that qualifies as federal assistance. It can also be the provision of valuable services, training, commodities, and land, and personal or real donated property. Some 30 federal agencies provide federal financial assistance. All the operations of a department that receives the aid must comply with Title VI, not just the branch using the assistance. For example, if a state's Department of Corrections uses money to improve one particular prison, the entire Department of Corrections must be in compliance with Title VI, not just the one prison. The goal of Title VI is voluntary compliance, and recipients must be given opportunities to voluntarily comply when violations are found. But if that cannot be achieved, federal financial assistance may be withdrawn. And the top priority is preventing discrimination in the first place. But to do that, you must understand the requirements of Title VI. First of all, Title VI covers race, color, and national origin discrimination. Other types of discrimination, like sex, age, and religious discrimination, are covered under different federal civil rights statutes or other parts of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Title VI protects individuals, groups of people, and in some instances, entire communities. Violations can occur when services or opportunities are flat out denied, or when services are not equally provided. For example, it may be that the streets in a minority neighborhood are not maintained as well as those in the non-minority side of town. In this instance, if the local government agency overseeing street repairs receives federal financial assistance, it may be in violation of Title VI. Or it could be that people seeking or receiving services are treated differently without justification. For example, minorities applying for food stamps are asked to show extra forms of documentation and make a stronger case for themselves than non-minorities before being granted enrollment in a program. Sometimes what is not done violates Title VI. For example, if a program that receives federal funds is not adequately equipped to assist people who do not speak English, that may be national origin discrimination. We'll talk more about that later. While in some cases the discrimination is against an entire group of people, in other cases it targets an individual. Let's look at the case of Mr. Michael Burley.
Mr. McSherry, look, I've got to go. I've been pushing you to all the local accounting firms, and I'm sure something will pan out. Hi. Who did you say you were?
We spoke on the phone a couple of days ago. I'm Michael Burley, the civil engineer who just moved to town.
Oh, yes, I remember you. Said you had a degree from Stanford.
That's me. Graduated top of the class, 1979.
Do you have any proof of that with you?
Well, no. I could get you proof, though. My word is good, let me assure you.
Mr. Burley, I don't doubt your credibility. It's just that I have to make sure that the resumes I submit to my clients are accurate. Now, may I see yours?
Sure. Here you are.
Looks like you moved around a lot.
Well, it's a sacrifice I've made in order to help my wife further her career. I've always held my jobs once I obtained them, though.
It's still very hard to recommend a candidate who's never held one job for longer than, what do we have here? 4 years.
There's a bright side to it. All that moving around has given me lots of experience in other forms of engineering.
Let's see what I can do.
Well, thank you so much for seeing me. Hi, Joanna. Michael Burley here. It's been 3 weeks since we last talked. Back then, you said you hadn't found a position for which to submit my resume.
Hold on, let me get your file. Nope, nothing yet.
But I don't understand what the holdup is. You serve a large area, and I told you that I'm willing to commute. Surely there must be some job that I'm at least qualified to apply for.
So far, nothing matches your experience and qualifications.
Well, what about that Lansbury Bridge project I told you I'd heard about? They're hiring a civil engineer. You said that job was being filled internally. I looked in the newspaper yesterday, and it was being advertised. I called over there. They tell me they've reviewed several applications from your employment office, and I wasn't one of them.
Mr. Burley, I only submit resumes for people whom I think are qualified.
But this is ridiculous. I have more than 8 years' experience designing bridges.
Mr. Burley, if you're that desperate to work, I've got some construction foreman positions I could recommend you for.
In fact, Michael Burley is qualified for the civil engineering position involving the construction of the Lansbury Bridge. He has more experience than 3 of the applicants Joanna sent over for the job. All the applicants Joanna sent to the company hiring a civil engineer were white.
Construction foreman? I don't think so. I sense something really wrong here, and I'm going to file a discrimination complaint.
Mr. Burley was correct. He was experiencing intentional discrimination or disparate treatment when his application was intentionally and unjustifiably treated differently by Joanna. Then, when she threw out Mr. Burley's files, Joanna was guilty of retaliation. Retaliation is an action taken against somebody because they have either taken action or participated in an action or attempt to secure their rights. Title VI prohibits retaliation, just as it prohibits discrimination. As we mentioned earlier, sometimes an entire community can be a victim of discrimination. Often, violations involve what would seem to be innocuous locations, such as your community's parks. Here's an illustration. This is the story of the No Parksville community and the battle waged by its Hispanic Action Group. The organization has been writing letters complaining that the parks in the Hispanic part of town are in disrepair, with peeling paint and old equipment. The Hispanic Action Group is upset because the children on the non-minority side of town have nicer parks.
I've got another letter from the Hispanic Action Group. Third one this year. It's got to be at least the 20th since I came on board as Parks Commissioner 5 years ago.
Yeah, well, they've been complaining about lots of stuff. They want new equipment and more programs.
I drive by their parks every day, and they do look bad.
We put all new equipment in one of those parks just 4 years ago.
The last few years, we've used an awful lot of our budget just starting up the one after-school program that they have, and we always fix up major equipment problems, so you're right, it's not like we've ignored them.
You know, the Latino area has 4 parks in a 25 square mile area. Same amount as we have in the other part of North Parksville.
Yeah.
It just doesn't seem that things are as bad as they make them out to be.
There is a difference here from what we saw in the story of Mr. Burley. The Parks and Recreation Committee is not stereotyping the Latino community or basing its actions on negative ideas about Hispanics. A lot of the decisions the Parks and Recreation Committee is making are based on their budget. It appears a real solution to this problem lies in fixing the budget. Let's take a look at a better way the committee might have handled these complaints.
I think we should reconsider how we allocate money for the parks. The parks in our Latino communities, they get much more use because the population is so dense there. We allocate funding for the parks based on area, not population.
You know, I think you're onto something there. I think this is something that we have to address to the City Council ourselves. Now, when it comes to funding after-school activities, I don't think we can afford to fund 2 new sports leagues, but look, I think we can budget for 1.
Oh, okay.
One would help.
You know what, I'm gonna call this Mr. Gomez, who keeps writing these letters, you know, and talk to him, see if I can find out more about the specific needs of the community.
The Parks Committee has touched on a very important concept in Title VI, disparate impact. In cases of disparate impact, discrimination is not the result of a direct or intentional action. Rather, it's the result of neutral policy that results in an unjustified adverse effect. In other words, the policy may appear harmless on the surface, and there may be no intent to discriminate, but it negatively affects the minority community, and there is no substantial justification for it. Take, for example, the situation in No Parksville. The assumption being made is that the same size area is equal to the same size population. Take a look at the houses in the affluent Sunnyvale side of town. They're big, with big yards. Now, here are the homes in the Latino neighborhoods. They are row houses, very tightly packed. So, block for block, you have a lot more people living in the minority community. So the parks get a lot more use. For that reason, it's more likely the equipment will be in poor condition and in need of more frequent repairs. One solution to this problem would be to determine funding for parks by the number of people served, not by the size of the area served.
While the parks situation is one example, there are many other instances where neutral policies may result in discrimination in the provision of services in violation of Title VI. It could be that communities choose to build garbage dumps in the minority side of town, or buses don't run as frequently in a minority part of town. If there is no substantial reason for the action and federal assistance is involved, there may be a Title VI violation. Sometimes there may be a disparate impact from a policy, but it won't be clear whether that result was intentional or not, such as when a local Department of Transportation buys 20 buses and uses almost all of them in the non-minority side of town, placing the old ones in the minority side of town. This might violate Title VI as either intentional discrimination or because it results from a neutral policy that has an unjustified adverse effect. Another type of discrimination that's not always so easy to spot is national origin discrimination. This may include discrimination based on an individual's country of birth, ancestry, or accent. It can also occur as a result of a person's inability to speak English. That's why it's important to understand the requirement that a program or entities have to serve people with limited English proficiency, or LEP. Millions of people in this country do not speak English. So what happens when they need services? If, for example, they go to the emergency room and nobody can speak their language or help them. In some instances, the communications breakdown is caused by an agency's failure to understand that it needs to serve a non-English speaking population.
In other instances, it results from prejudice that may be at the root of discrimination against people from other countries. Just imagine what it would be like going to a police station or calling an emergency service and not having anyone on hand who could understand your needs. Let's look at the case of Mrs. Xuan Lui. She is a member of a substantial Chinese community being served by her local police department. She's coming to police today after she discovered her house was ransacked.
警官，请帮助我，我不知道该怎么办。我刚回到家就发现家已经被抢劫了，所有的东西都被偷走了。
Do you speak English?
我只会讲中文，我们全家刚到美国2个多月，我们。
Hold on. Do you have a friend that speaks English? I need English.
No English， 我只会讲中文。我失去了我所有的重要的文件和财产，连我母亲给我的首饰都没。
Yeah, okay. Yeah, Captain Carlson, this is Officer Johnson down at the front desk. I have a woman here that's speaking some foreign language, probably Chinese or Korean, but she doesn't speak a word of English. Anyway, no, she doesn't appear to be in any immediate danger. Okay, yeah, I'll deal with it. Right. Spring English speaker. All right.
Police services are vital to all people in this country, not just those who speak English. In this case, the officer tried to work with Mrs. Yi, but he couldn't communicate with her. Ultimately, he denied her a service and may have violated Title VI. Let's take a look at how this scenario could have played out had proper LEP guidelines been in place at the police station.
No.
Oh, okay. Hold on a second. Okay. Yeah, Captain Carlson, Officer Johnson down here. I have a woman that doesn't speak a word of English. She picked the Mandarin I Speak card. Is Officer Wang around to translate? He's not up there. Okay, no, I'll use the phone company's translation service. Yeah, our police department has a contract with them.
Language line, how can I help you?
Yeah, I have a woman here that I believe speaks Mandarin Chinese. I'm going to put her on the line.
Just a moment, please. 好的，女士，我会向警官解释你的情况，他会帮助你的。让我和他通话。
我需要警官的帮助，我的家被抢劫了，所有的东西都被抢光了，我的钱和我的首饰，我只离家了一会儿。
和他通电话。Officer, this woman says her house has been robbed. Sounds pretty serious.
Let's look at what went right this time. First, the officer was able to look at the police station's LEP guidelines, posted right at his place of work. Also, the officer was familiar with the community he serves. In this instance, the police department serves a large Chinese population, so it had hired a Chinese-speaking staff member. But when that staff member wasn't present, Officer Johnson knew he had a plan B. He could call his telephone company's translation service because he knew that the police department had a contract with them. And finally, the police station had vital documents translated into the woman's language.
All right.
The way agencies plan to handle people with limited English proficiency depends on 4 factors. 1, the number or proportion of people with limited English proficiency served in the service population. 2, the frequency with which the LEP individuals come in contact with the program. 3, the importance of the service provided by the program. And 4, the resources available to the participant. Each entity that receives federal financial assistance should apply this 4-factor analysis to its program and figure out what it needs to do to serve LEP individuals. Agencies will decide which of their important documents need to be translated. It is the role of the federal government to enforce Title VI. Applicants for federal funds should be prepared for a possible pre-award or post-award review to
to determine whether Title VI problems exist. But most importantly, any recipient of federal funds must act as its own watchdog, carefully monitoring for possible violations. So, what should you do if you think you were a victim of discrimination, like Mr. Burley? Mr. Burley could file a lawsuit in court against the recipient of funds that's accused of discriminating. Or he can file a complaint with the federal agency that provides funds to the entity accused of discriminating. He should write out his complaint explicitly and give the names of the parties involved and what entity discriminated, in this case, the Clark County Employment Office. If he's not sure which federal agency to file with, he can ask the recipient. Recipients are obligated to send people to the right place to file complaints. As a last resort, if a person still isn't sure where to file his complaint, it can be sent to the Department of Justice, which serves as a Title VI government-wide clearinghouse. Once the federal agency determines that the complaint falls within its jurisdiction, it will investigate the case or take other appropriate action. In the end, it could be that no evidence of discrimination is found, or if discrimination is found, the federal agency will decide if voluntary compliance is possible. Entities very often are willing to do the right thing, but may not know what that is, and when told, they do it right away. However, sometimes entities don't comply, and then the federal agency could take some very strict measures. It could yank the money from the part of the program where noncompliance is found, or it could refer the case to the Justice Department for a lawsuit to stop the discrimination.
The Civil Rights Act of 1964 is now and will continue to be an important piece of the foundation upon which we are building a better America. Title VI is a critical part of that law. For more information,